Look at your wrist. The watch, the bracelet, the piece of fabric you've tied around it. You believe it's just a personal choice, something you put there for style or habit. But what if this small detail was silently draining your strength, your focus, and even your prosperity? Since ancient times, our ancestors believed that the hands were not only tools, but extensions of the soul, capable of transmitting and absorbing energy. Every motion, every gesture, is part of a current that connects us to the world around us. Somewhere along the line, that knowledge was lost, buried beneath fashion trends and consumer culture. Yet, traces of it remain, in rituals, in symbols, and in the myths of civilizations that understood energy better than we do today. Thousands of years ago, under the golden light of the Egyptian sun, priests and sages studied these invisible forces. They knew that the human body mirrored the universe, what they called the microcosm reflecting the macrocosm. Among them stood Thoth, the ibis-headed god, the master of hidden laws and sacred geometry, the scribe who recorded the mechanisms of creation itself. For the Egyptians, Thoth wasn't merely a deity but the embodiment of cosmic intelligence, the universal mind that gives structure to all existence. It was believed he taught humanity how energy flowed through form, how words, symbols, and intention could shape reality itself. Later, when Greek and Egyptian wisdom merged, Thoth's teachings blended with those of Hermes, the messenger god, giving birth to the figure known as Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great master. His philosophy, preserved through fragments like the Emerald Tablet, taught that everything in existence follows a single pattern. As above, so below. This law means that your body isn't separate from the universe but is a perfect reflection of it. Every cell, every organ, every movement resonates with the cosmic order. Your hands in this model are far more than physical appendages. They are living terminals of energy, able to send and receive currents from the unseen world. They form the point where your personal vibration meets the rhythm of the cosmos. Ancient initiates understood this. They didn't wear their ornate armlets and talismans for status or beauty. Each piece had purpose, a tool for balance, manifestation, or protection. The right hand, associated with the sun, projected energy outward, the hand of power and action. The left, linked with the moon, drew energy inward, the hand of reception and intuition. When priests placed metal cuffs or beaded strands on these wrists, they weren't decorating themselves. They were programming their energy flow. They knew that using the wrong side could disrupt the natural polarity of the body, just as reversing a magnet nullifies its field. This understanding extended far beyond Egypt. Across Asia, the Americas, and Europe, shamans, healers, and mystics recognized similar dualities. Right as active, left as receptive. One side to give, one to receive. It was universal knowledge. But over millennia, as societies shifted from sacred to material, the spiritual mechanics behind these practices were forgotten. Jewelry became fashion. Symbols turned into trends. And the energetic technology of the body, how intention interacts with matter, was dismissed as myth. What was once sacred science was reduced to superstition. Yet the body remembers. Every time you move your hands, you generate electromagnetic fields. Modern science has proven that the human heart and brain emit measurable frequencies. The palms and fingertips, rich in nerve endings, conduct subtle currents. What ancient sages intuited, bioenergetics now begins to confirm. The human energy system operates like a circuit. When balanced, it enhances vitality and focus. When crossed or blocked, it creates fatigue and imbalance. The objects we wear, metals, stones, even fabrics, interact with these fields, amplifying or distorting them depending on their placement and composition. This is why Thoth's teachings endure in esoteric traditions. They remind us that consciousness directs energy, and energy shapes experience. The wrist, positioned between the heart, our emotional core, and the hand, our instrument of action, is a natural gateway between inner intention and outer expression. It's where will becomes deed. Every item worn there carries symbolic and energetic weight, whether you realize it or not. That is why kings and priests wore sacred bands engraved with protective formulas, and why healers in every culture tied threads or stones around their wrists before rituals. They weren't obeying fashion. They were stabilizing the current of power between the realms of thought and matter. So, look again at your wrist. The accessory may seem ordinary, but energetically it's a key point of influence, a portal that connects your inner world to the forces outside you. When used consciously, it can amplify confidence, attract prosperity, or guard your energy. When used carelessly, it can short-circuit your vitality, leaving you drained without knowing why. The ancients were not naive. They understood what we've forgotten, that nothing worn on the body is neutral. Every symbol, every material, every position holds a charge. And if your hands truly are portals, one to project and one to receive, then what you place upon them determines the balance between what you give to the world and what the world gives back to you. Our journey now moves deeper, beyond symbols and myth, into how this lost knowledge shaped the way ancient societies understood power itself. For them, energy wasn't abstract. It was tangible, measurable, and governable through ritual and geometry. Thoth's temples were laboratories of vibration. Every line carved into stone, every color on a mural, every angle of a pyramid had a frequency. To the priests, this wasn't art. It was science. They saw creation as an act of resonance, the alignment of human intention with cosmic rhythm. The same principle guided the wearing of ornaments. Each metal, each stone, emitted a vibration that could either strengthen or distort the human field depending on where it was placed on the body. This worldview gave birth to what we now call sacred polarity. The right side of the body was the solar path, linked to Ra, the sun, the masculine principle of expansion and assertion. The left was lunar, connected to Isis, the feminine principle of intuition and receptivity. Balance between the two meant harmony between the seen and the unseen, between action and awareness. The wrists were seen as junction points where the internal current met the external one. That's why initiates wore coated armlets before ceremonies, not to impress spectators, but to open or close energetic gates within themselves. When the right wrist bore gold, it enhanced projection, willpower, charisma, leadership. When the left carried silver or moonstone, it sharpened inner sight, compassion, and emotional calm. These weren't accessories but instruments of energetic engineering. Over centuries, as these practices spread through Greece, Persia, and India, their essence survived in fragments. The Vedic tradition spoke of prana flowing through nadis, channels similar to what the Egyptians described. The Chinese called it qi and mapped it through meridians, each associated with an organ and emotion. Both recognize the hands as power points, the right as yang, active and warming, the left as yin, receptive and cooling. No civilization treated the wrists as meaningless decoration. They were gateways, and the act of binding or adorning them was always ritual in nature, whether to summon protection, align the mind, or mark allegiance to a divine principle. Modern people, unaware of this heritage, replicate fragments of these rituals without context. The corporate executive who wears a luxury watch on the right wrist unknowingly amplifies his projection energy, radiating control, command, and outward focus. The artist who ties a thread or beaded bracelet on the left unconsciously nourishes her inward current, intuition, empathy, creativity. The problem begins when the placements conflict with the wearer's state. A person overwhelmed by stress who keeps amplifying solar energy on the right side may experience burnout and aggression. Another who fills the left wrist with absorbing stones while living in a chaotic environment may feel perpetually exhausted or anxious. Energy obeys laws whether we understand them or not, and ignorance doesn't protect us from their effects. Science now provides subtle confirmation. Research in biomagnetism shows that the human body produces distinct electromagnetic polarities between its right and left halves. Studies on brain hemispheric dominance reveal that each side of the body corresponds to opposite neural control. the right hand linked to the analytical left brain processes of logic and speech, the left hand to the right brain network of creativity and emotion. When you reverse energetic inputs, using stimulating elements on the receptive side or vice versa, you create biological stress, a measurable form of disharmony. The ancients expressed this through metaphor. The sun and moon must not eclipse one another within the body. Reclaiming this wisdom doesn't require mysticism. It begins with observation. Notice how you feel when wearing something heavy or metallic on one side. Do you feel more assertive, more restless, or calmer? Energy sensitivity is natural. We've just forgotten how to listen. To live consciously, every item you wear should be chosen as deliberately as words you speak. The question is not, does this look good? But, what is this doing to my field? When awareness replaces habit, you become the operator of your circuit instead of a passive conductor. Think again of Thoth, the symbol of knowledge, writing, and truth. His ibis beak, always pointing toward the horizon, represented discernment, the ability to separate signal from noise. To him, ignorance was the only true darkness. In his teachings, energy follows thought, and thought follows awareness. Therefore, control begins not with possession, but with understanding. Your bracelets, your watch, even the technology you wear daily, all are extensions of that ancient circuit. Each pulse, each vibration communicates with your nervous system. When you start to treat these objects as carriers of intent rather than decorations, something shifts. The same way a scribe's reed carries the will of the mind onto stone, the wrist carries the will of the heart into motion. You begin to sense that the old myths were not primitive religion, but coded instructions for human mastery. Beneath the stories of gods lies a manual for balance. Project with purpose, receive with discernment. In every movement of the hands, the dance of creation repeats. And by remembering what the ancients knew, that your body is not a boundary but a bridge, you begin to restore the power that has always been yours. When knowledge slipped from temples into myths, its outer form survived but its inner science dissolved. Humanity kept the symbols but forgot their power. What once served to tune the body to cosmic rhythm became mere decoration. The sacred act of wearing an amulet degraded into habit. Yet, as Thoth's law declared, nothing is truly lost, only transformed. Energy hides in plain sight, awaiting remembrance. Every ring, chain, or bracelet still carries a vibration. Every placement still speaks to the field around you. The forgotten art remains active, only waiting for consciousness to awaken it again. Consider how the ancients viewed matter itself. For them, every mineral, plant, or metal was not inert but alive with frequency. Gold radiated solar fire. Copper conducted vitality. Silver calmed and purified lunar currents. Quartz captured and magnified intention like crystal memory. When these materials touch the pulse of the wrist, a site where the body's meridians converge, they became bridges between the physical and energetic realms. The bracelet was not a status symbol but a key to attunement. To place the wrong element on the wrong side meant reversing the flow of life force. To align them properly meant harmony between will and reception, action and reflection. The right hand, guided by the left hemisphere of the brain, was the hand of direction and command. It represented logic, manifestation, and creation. When a bracelet resonant with courage, protection, or ambition was worn on the right wrist, the wearer's aura expanded outward, imprinting intention upon the world. It was the side of expression, the channel through which thought becomes matter. The left hand, guided by the right brain, belonged to the unseen world, emotion, memory, intuition. It absorbed and translated subtle energies, opening the inner gates of perception. Healing stones, symbols of peace, or charms of love belonged there, drawing their frequencies inward to replenish the spirit. Together, these two hands formed a living circuit of energy exchange, giving and receiving, masculine and feminine, sun and moon. When this polarity is respected, life flows in balance. When it is ignored, imbalance multiplies. A person who constantly wears active, fiery symbols on both wrists may feel restless, aggressive, or burnt out. Another who stacks calming, receptive charms may sink into fatigue or confusion. The ancients designed their practices to prevent exactly this, to maintain energetic symmetry between output and input. Their wisdom was encoded in architecture, ritual gesture, and adornment. But in our modern era, surrounded by artificial light, electromagnetic noise, and synthetic materials, we overload one side of the circuit while starving the other. The result is chronic exhaustion and spiritual disconnection that no amount of rest seems to cure. Reawakening this understanding doesn't mean returning to superstition. It means remembering that energy obeys laws as real as gravity. Modern biofield research confirms that the human body radiates measurable electromagnetic patterns. The heart and brain synchronize in rhythms that extend beyond the skin. When an external object enters that field, resonance occurs. Some materials amplify coherence, others disrupt it. Wearing copper or gold, for instance, subtly affects the conductivity of the skin's current. Crystals, long dismissed as decorative stones, exhibit piezoelectric properties that transform mechanical pressure into electrical charge. Ancient priests may not have known the scientific terms, but they felt the results. What they called spirit, we now call energy. To apply this in daily life is to restore a dialogue between awareness and action. The bracelet, ring, or amulet becomes a physical reminder of the energy you choose to project or absorb. When preparing for leadership or confrontation, one might wear a symbol of strength on the right wrist, not for appearance but to channel confidence outward. When entering spaces heavy with tension or negativity, one might shift to the left wrist a stone that grounds or cleanses, allowing the body to filter incoming energy instead of absorbing it blindly. This simple awareness reintroduces agency into a world where people are taught to consume symbols without meaning. Thoth's legacy teaches that mastery begins with observation. The gods of Egypt were never distant deities but archetypes of consciousness. To embody Thoth is to practice discernment, to recognize how every thought, movement, and object interacts with universal law. The hands are the medium through which that law operates. With the right, we write destiny upon matter. With the left, we read the invisible text of the universe. The moment you use both with intention, you begin to co-create rather than react. So, the lesson hidden in ancient ornamentation is simple yet profound. You are already holding the instruments of transformation. Your energy flows where your awareness directs it. The objects you wear are amplifiers, not accessories. Whether they serve you or drain you depends solely on how consciously you use them. The forgotten temples of Egypt have turned to stone, but the temple of your body still stands, and your wrists remain its gateways. To align them is to remember what humanity once knew, that creation is not an external miracle but an internal command. Now that the structure of energy between the two hands is clear, the deeper mystery emerges. What happens when that balance is broken? The ancients warned that reversal of polarity is not a minor mistake. It is the invisible cause of decline in vitality, clarity, and prosperity. They compared the human energy system to a temple lamp. One side fuels the flame, the other releases light. If you reverse the flow, the flame suffocates. In the same way, when a person wears a projecting symbol on the receptive side or a receptive one on the projecting side, their own field begins to feed against itself. It's like crossing positive and negative wires. Energy leaks instead of circulating. This misunderstanding is common because modern culture treats the body as decoration, not as circuitry. Millions wear bracelets, watches, and digital bands purely for fashion or status, never realizing they are manipulating powerful entry points. Metals, stones, and even synthetic materials interact with the biofield. Gold amplifies will, but if placed on the wrong side, it amplifies tension. Silver calms, but in the wrong position it drains momentum. A protective stone like black tourmaline, meant to repel dense energy, can trap that same heaviness inside the body if worn on the left wrist. A gentle stone like rose quartz, meant to nourish the heart, can instead project emotional energy outward if worn on the right, leaving the wearer strangely empty while those around them feel comforted. These effects are subtle but cumulative, manifesting as fatigue, irritability, or loss of direction. In the temples of Thoth, students were trained to avoid such reversals. Before initiation, they spent weeks cleansing both wrists in salt water and sunlight to restore the natural current of the body. Only then were they given bracelets engraved with sacred geometry. The master would test each pupil's polarity by having them hold a copper rod in one hand and a silver rod in the other. If energy moved correctly, the rods felt warm and alive. If reversed, they grew cold. The exercise wasn't superstition, it was energetic calibration. The right side always linked to giving, the left to receiving. Once this balance was anchored, the initiate could safely work with vibration, manifestation, and healing without draining their own life force. Today, this knowledge can still be applied. The first step is awareness. Pay attention to sensations when you wear something new. The body is precise. It communicates through temperature, pressure, and emotion. A ring or bracelet that feels tight, heavy, or noisy is signaling disharmony. The second step is correction. Objects for strength, projection, and protection belong to the right wrist. Tiger's eye, obsidian, gold, bronze, and strong geometric patterns. Objects for love, healing, and receptivity belong to the left. Rose quartz, moonstone, silver, amethyst, or water symbols. When uncertain, start with one side only and observe your energy for a full day before balancing with the other. The goal isn't decoration, but resonance, feeling that your inner current moves freely again. The deeper purpose of this practice is to transform unconscious living into conscious direction. Every time you adjust what you wear with intention, you remind the body that you are in command of its field. Over time, this builds coherence, an alignment between thought, emotion, and action. Coherence is what the ancients called harmony with Ma'at, the universal order. When the two wrists operate in unity, giving and receiving alternate effortlessly, you act with clarity, rest with peace, and attract circumstances that match your vibration. The same principle applies to speech and behavior. Every word you send is projection. Every silence is reception. The more aware you are of these cycles, the more you enter the state that Hermetic philosophers called the rhythm of the spheres. But imbalance can also be intentionally used when understood. The magician, healer, or artist may choose to overload one side temporarily to achieve a specific result, intensifying output for creation or input for contemplation. The danger lies only in unawareness. Without grounding, overprojection burns energy. Overabsorption clouds perception. Thus, ancient initiates alternated phases: right-hand work during daylight, left-hand meditation under moonlight. Their goal was not power for its own sake, but mastery of rhythm, the capacity to shift polarity at will. Seen from this perspective, the simple act of wearing a bracelet becomes a declaration of alignment. It signals whether you are radiating or receiving, acting or listening. It is a contract between your microcosm and the macrocosm. The law, as above, so below, becomes tangible, flowing through your pulse. The same current that moves the stars moves through your veins. Thoth's message was never about worshiping objects. It was about awakening consciousness through them. The true talisman is awareness itself. When you realize this, even a thread becomes sacred because intention has made it so. So the next time you look at your wrists, remember that they are not empty spaces to fill with fashion. They are gates, one for the world to meet you, one for you to meet the world. When these gates operate in harmony, you stop scattering energy and start shaping it. The magician's secret was always simple: direction, not decoration. When the ancients spoke of the short circuit of the soul, they were describing what happens when human energy turns inward without direction. A reversed flow traps intention instead of releasing it. The person feels busy but unproductive, emotional but disconnected. This invisible exhaustion is the modern disease. It begins not in the body but in the field around it, in the confusion between what should be given and what should be received. The temples once taught that the cure for this condition was awareness. the art of consciously charging every action with meaning. They called it Heka, the science of the spoken word and living symbol. To wear an object or perform a gesture without awareness was to hand over one's creative authority. Thoth's disciples learned that even the smallest object could alter destiny if charged with clear intent. A bracelet worn on the right hand after ritual invocation became an engine of projection. Worn on the left, it became a vessel of reception. Neither was good or bad. Each served a phase of the cosmic cycle: action and contemplation, giving and taking, day and night. Humanity's tragedy is not choosing one over the other, but forgetting to move between them. The priest knew when to act and when to withdraw. The magician understood when to speak and when to listen. But modern life pushes both poles at once: constant output and uncontrolled intake. Screens radiate signals into the right hand while drawing energy through the left. Phones, watches, bracelets all emit and absorb. We live inside an electromagnetic storm with no polarity discipline. Restoring balance starts with conscious ritual. You cleanse the physical to clear the energetic. You set intention before contact. The ancients had dozens of techniques: bathing an amulet in salt, passing it through incense smoke, or exposing it to sunlight or moonlight depending on its function. These were not empty gestures. They reset resonance, erasing the imprints left by others. Today, the same can be done through simple visualization. Imagining a white current washing through the object, returning it to neutrality. Once purified, the object must be consecrated. This means aligning it with higher purpose. May this serve the light within and around me. Only then should it be programmed, filled with a single, precise command that mirrors your current need. The mistake many make is mixing purposes, asking one object to protect, heal, attract, and manifest at once. Energy obeys clarity. A confused command yields no result. When the right wrist bears an item charged for projection, it works like a transmitter. You broadcast an energetic message to the world. The quality of that signal depends on your emotional state. Anger turns protection into aggression. Fear converts manifestation into control. Gratitude and confidence create coherent waves that attract aligned opportunities. On the left, the same principle works in reverse. The object there filters what you receive. A peaceful mind draws peace. A fearful one pulls chaos. The universe mirrors not your wishes, but your vibration. The ancients simplified this into one law: you attract what you are tuned to. The bracelets were tuning devices, visual and tactile reminders to maintain the correct frequency. In the schools of Thoth, initiates were taught to alternate between two exercises each day. In the morning, they placed the amulet of projection on the right and spent a short time visualizing their goals spreading outward like rays of light. At sunset, they moved it to the left and meditated on gratitude, drawing back the wisdom of the day. This constant exchange kept the current alive. They knew stagnation was death. When energy flows in only one direction, even the direction of giving, the circuit eventually collapses. Life itself depends on rhythm, expansion, and contraction, heartbeat, and breath. Every organism follows it. Every failure of rhythm is decay. Seen from this perspective, the wisdom of Thoth was not mystical, but practical. He mapped the universe as a feedback loop between thought and matter. The human served as intermediary, the pen that writes reality and the page that receives it. That's why his image always includes the writing tablet and stylus. He symbolizes the act of inscription, the mind engraving intention onto existence. The hands hold both tools because both are needed. Without the left to receive inspiration, the right writes blindly. Without the right to manifest, the left dreams endlessly. Mastery is the meeting point. So when you adorn your wrists, you are unconsciously repeating a ritual older than civilization itself. You are declaring your position in the cosmic dialogue. Will you act or listen? Give or receive? Command or reflect? Once this choice becomes conscious, even the simplest thread becomes sacred technology. The material is secondary. The awareness is the key. The ancients used gold and lapis because they understood frequency. You can achieve the same with rope and breath if your intention is pure. The magic is not in the object but in the operator. The temple was never built of stone. It was built of attention. To live as the scribes of Thoth did is to remember that every gesture writes on the universe. When your energy moves with precision, the world responds with clarity. When your polarity is confused, life mirrors confusion. The secret, then, is balance, to be both the author and the reader of your destiny. When this awareness matures, you begin to realize that the secret of Thoth was never about bracelets, amulets, or rituals. Those were only training wheels, tools designed to awaken a deeper faculty, conscious authorship. The true temple is the body, and its sacred scripture is awareness itself. The wrists, the hands, the heart, these are the altars where intention and action meet. The divine scribe's lesson was simple. Reality is written from within outward. You are both the writer and the tablet. Each thought inscribes a pattern into the invisible substance of existence, and each action seals it into matter. When you understand this, energy work becomes less about manipulating external forces and more about mastering the direction of your own attention. Because wherever attention flows, energy follows. If your focus scatters, your energy diffuses. If your focus anchors in fear, you feed fear. But when you hold awareness steady, like Thoth's stylus pressed into the clay of the universe, the world itself begins to shape around your command. This is the final alchemy, turning perception into creation. The old texts described it with symbols because language could not contain it. Yet the essence remains. Your mind is a divine tool, and your body is the mechanism through which it acts. At this level, polarity becomes cooperation rather than opposition. The right and left no longer compete. They complete each other. The sun and moon, giving and receiving, act as two movements of one consciousness. When you speak, the world listens. When you listen, the world speaks. This reciprocity is the rhythm of creation itself. To live in this rhythm is to live without resistance. You no longer force outcomes, you tune yourself to them. The energy you project through the right hand returns multiplied through the left. It forms an unbroken loop. The Ouroboros, the serpent consuming its tail, the eternal cycle of manifestation and renewal. The ancients called this state Ma'at, the harmony that sustains the cosmos. In Hermetic language, it is the equilibrium between above and below. Modern science describes it as coherence, when the heart, brain, and electromagnetic field vibrate in synchrony. Whatever the name, the experience is unmistakable. Calm clarity, heightened intuition, effortless timing. You move in step with events rather than against them. People call it luck or synchronicity, but it is simply resonance, the natural consequence of an aligned field. When you reach this state, protection, prosperity, and wisdom no longer need to be sought externally. They arise from within as automatic reflections of inner order. This is the essence of Thoth's teaching. Knowledge must transform into wisdom, and wisdom into embodiment. Reading about energy changes nothing if your daily gestures contradict it. The ancients lived their truths through physical ritual because repetition impresses patterns upon the subconscious. Every dawn, they would greet the sun with the right hand raised, an act of projection. Every dusk, they placed the left hand over the heart, an act of reception. In this way, they reminded the body to stay in dialogue with the universe. You can recreate this today without temples or gold. All that is needed is consistency and awareness. Start small. In the morning, before touching your devices, place your right hand over your solar plexus and state silently, "Today, I project clarity and strength." Feel that current expanding outward. At night, place your left hand over your heart and whisper, "I receive peace and understanding." This simple practice begins to reprogram your polarity. Over weeks, you'll notice less fatigue, steadier emotions, sharper intuition. The ritual works not because of superstition, but because it retrains attention, the true conductor of energy. Eventually, the external symbols lose their necessity. You may still wear bracelets, but now they serve as reminders, not crutches. The real talisman is invisible, the alignment between thought, word, and deed. When those three harmonize, every act becomes magic. You no longer need to ask whether your energy is blocked or flowing. You feel it moving as naturally as breath. You stop chasing results and start generating them. This is what the ancients called the mastery of light, the awakening of the inner scribe who writes reality consciously. Thoth's message across millennia remains unchanged. Know thyself, and you shall know the gods. For to know yourself as energy is to recognize divinity not as something distant, but as the intelligence pulsing through your veins. The bracelets, the temples, the hieroglyphs, all were mirrors pointing back to this truth. You were never powerless. You were only untrained in your own architecture. The moment you remember that your right hand commands the world and your left hand communes with it, you reclaim the forgotten art of balance. So now, when you look at, your wrists understand what they represent, not bondage, not fashion, but choice. One hand writes destiny, the other reads it. Between them lies the full circuit of creation. When they work together, you become what Thoth intended humanity to be, a conscious bridge between heaven and earth, matter and spirit, word and silence. And in that harmony, you realize the final secret, that the power you sought in objects, gods, or rituals was never outside you. It has always been in your hands.